Good morning, everybody. Today we are continuing with our revision, Module 3, the regulation of respiration. So, how the respiration is regulated? It is mainly with the help of two groups of neurons which are present in the brain. That is coming under the category of neural regulation. Apart from this, there is one more regulation, that is chemical regulation. That is a set of receptors which are present in the artery. That is two arteries, aortic arch and carotid branch. In that, the receptors will sense the presence of carbon dioxide as well as the presence of H plus ions, and they send the signal to the brain itself. So it is broadly divided into neural regulation and chemical regulation. First we'll move on to neural regulation. Neural regulation, the neurons, collection of neurons or the centers, they are present in two regions. One, it is in the medulla, that is in the brain stem itself, medulla, and the second one in the pons. The medulla, the center is called as respiratory rhythm center, and in the pons, the center is called as pneumotaxic center. Now we will find out what is actually going on in the center. Here, this region is called as pons. The word meaning of pons itself is bridge. That means it is the region which connects the upper region of the brain to the lower region of the brain. Hence that term is specifically given to this region, that is called as pons. And the lowermost region of the brain, it is medulla. And we'll start from the medulla. This region is called as respiratory rhythm center. And in this, there are two sets of centers or group of neurons. The dorsal region, there is a set of neuron that is called as dorsal respiratory group. Behind that, another group is there that is called as ventral respiratory group. So, whenever the requirement of any modifications in the respiratory rate or in the depth of respiration, that will be sent to the brain. So how it is sent means, in breathing, inspiration is active process and expiration is passive process. So mainly the dorsal respiratory group will regulate the process of inspiration. Dorsal respiratory group will regulate the process of inspiration. And the ventral respiratory group will regulate in the situations, that is forceful inspiration and forceful expiration. So whenever we require extra amount of energy, extra amount of oxygen, that time that forceful inspiration and forceful expiration is controlled by ventral respiratory group. So as such, collectively we will call this center as respiratory rhythm center. They will regulate the rhythm of breathing. And the second center, which is located in the pons, that center name as such, it is pneumotaxic center. So pneumotaxic center, which will moderate the functions of the respiratory rhythm center. That means it will increase the breathing rate. It will increase the breathing rate and reduce the duration of breathing. It will increase the breathing rate. That means very fast respiration. Breathing, very fast breathing. Normally a person in a minute 12 to 16 means it can control whenever the requirement of oxygen is high. That time they will regulate, this center will take action and they give instructions to increase the breathing rate, at the same time to decrease the depth of breathing. In such way, the fast respiration and very fast ventilation of lungs will be enhanced. So these collectively, these together will come under the category of neural regulation. So once again, the respiratory rhythm center, that in turn it consists of dorsal respiratory group of neurons and ventral respiratory group of neurons. Dorsal respiratory group mainly regulating the region, that is a process, that is inspiration, whereas ventral respiration in forceful inspiration as well as forceful expiration. And the moderating the functions of respiration is done by pneumotaxic center by reducing the respiratory rate and reducing the duration of the breathing. The depth of breathing is done by, in such a way it will regulate. Then just above the respiratory rhythm center there is one more region. That region is called as chemosensory region. So from the artery the chemical alteration will be sent to this chemosensory area, and from there it will pass on to this respiratory center. So not only the requirement when the blood is passing through the arteries, that also intimated to the brain then and there. So we will move on to the reading part. That is, the respiratory rhythm center in medulla consists of neurons. They are of two categories: dorsal respiratory group, which regulate the process of inspiration, and ventral respiratory group, which will regulate the process of forceful expiration as well as inspiration. Then respiratory center in pons, that is called as pneumotaxic center, which control the rate and depth of breathing and moderate the functions of respiratory rhythm center. It will reduce the duration of respiration, thereby increasing the respiratory rate. Now we'll move on to how the chemical respiration is taking place. Chemical regulation, chemosensory regulation. There are two sets of receptors. First one is called as aortic bodies, which are located in the aortic arch. The second set is called as carotid body, which is present in the carotid arch. So when we look into this chemical regulation, the figure, the heart will collect the blood. The right side will collect the deoxygenated blood and left side will collect the oxygenated blood. And it will pass on from the atria, it will pass on to the ventricle. And from the left ventricle, the oxygenated blood will be carried by the major artery, the main artery, that is called as aorta. And when it reaches near the chest region, the aorta will bend over in the form of an arch shape, that is called as aortic arch. From that, one branch will go down to the lower region of the body. Three branches will go up. One is to the shoulder, one is to the neck, and one is to the brain: brachiocephalic and carotid artery. And in that, the aortic arch, in that arch region itself, there is set of receptors, chemosensory receptors are there, that are collectively called as aortic arch, aortic bodies. In the aortic arch, the receptors located, that is called as aortic bodies. They will sense the, whenever the blood passes through, each and every time they will sense the presence of partial pressure of carbon dioxide and the H plus ions. Not partial pressure, that means the amount of carbon dioxide. Okay, partial pressure itself, the amount of carbon dioxide. So whenever it is increasing than the normal condition, because they carry oxygenated blood, so carbon dioxide should be less. So if it exceeds, then and there, it will, this bodies will sense that concentration which is very high, and that will pass on to this with the help of nerves. It will pass on to the first to the chemosensory area, from there to the respiratory rhythm center. So the respiratory rhythm center will get the intimation, that is the oxygenated blood, in the artery the blood is less, carrying more amount of carbon dioxide, and in that way the inspiration will be regulated. The rate of respiration will be regulated. And the same way, another group of arteries, that is from the aortic arch itself to the upper region of the head, that is to the neck and head, another artery passes, and that artery is called as carotid artery. And the carotid artery, when it just near the head region, it will divide, that bifurcate. So in that region there is one more chemosensory receptors. That receptors also will sense the presence of carbon dioxide and H plus. Whenever it increases, that also will send the signal to the chemosensory area, and then to the respective actions will be, moderations will be, modifications will be taken with the help of dorsal respiratory group of neurons and the ventral respiratory group. Then here we can see always the blood, the receptors can check only the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and the amount of carbon dioxide as well as the H plus ions. In the regulation part, there is no special role for the oxygen. Whether the oxygen is high or not also, this receptors cannot detect. They will detect only the amount of carbon dioxide as well as the H plus ion. So oxygen is not having any regulatory role in the case of regulation of respiration. So this one we will read it again. Chemosensory regulation, aortic bodies, chemoreceptors in the aortic arch can sense increase in partial pressure of carbon dioxide and H plus ions. The blood passing through and make necessary arrangements to regulate. Then carotid bodies, receptors associated with aortic arch and carotid artery, also sensitive to carbon dioxide and H plus ions concentrations, and send signal to the rhythm center for remedial action. Now we will move on to the last part of this lesson, that is disorders of respiratory system. The three divisions only we have to learn. That is, the first one is asthma. Asthma is the disease condition where the person will be affected with breathing difficulties. So mainly that will result in wheezing, deep breathing, and it is mainly due to the inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. So most of the cases, the dust allergy, continuous presence of dust or pollution also can lead to asthmatic condition. There are many other reasons also, genetical influence also is there. Apart from that, the highly polluted place, if you are living, then it can also lead to asthmatic condition. The second one, you all are familiar because always in the advertisement, cigarette smoking warning advertisement and all, we may come across this term that is called as emphysema, which is a chronic disorder in which the alveolar walls are damaged mainly due to cigarette smoking, because cigarette it is made from nicotine, tobacco leaves, which contain an alkaloid that is called as nicotine, which is poisonous to our body. So this nicotine can increase the blood pressure, and as a result, when the more with high pressure the blood vessels are moving through this alveoli, then it can increase the pressure, and the pressure also will affect the functioning of alveolus. Apart from that, it can reduce the elasticity of the alveolar walls. And as a result, what will happen? With much pressure, the air is entering inside, and that too, cigarette smoking will contain carbon monoxide and other harmful gases. And this nicotine can form a coating around this alveolar lungs, and this will reduce the functioning of alveolus by reducing the surface area. How it can reduce the surface area means, when the elasticity is lost, the alveolar walls will get damaged, it will break. When it is breaking, the surface area will reduce. The whole individual saccular structure of the alveolus will unite together and they will form only a single bag-like structure. So when it is becoming a single bag-like structure, the surface area will reduce. So when the surface area is reducing, the diffusion of respiratory gases from lungs to the blood will decrease. So when the diffusion is decreasing, the amount of oxygen passing on from lungs to the arteries also will be decreased. So that result in major amount of deoxygenated blood passing through the blood vessels. So that can result in cyanotic condition, that is bluish tinge on the lips, on the fingernail, and in acute cases the breathing difficulties will be affected. So it is chronic disorder. Finally, it will result in malfunctioning of the lungs, and due to the deficiency of oxygen, the person will be affected with the respiration. The third category is occupational respiratory disorder. Why it is called occupational means the respiratory disorder which arises due to the person who is involved in the special type of occupation, because as a result of there are many industries, stone mining, then stone breaking industries, then granite industries, cotton industries where the cotton fiber we are dealing with, coal mining industries, like that different types of industries are working. And in that, very minute particles, as a result of functioning of that one, very minute particles will be, the person who all are working in that will be exposed to such type of minute particles when they breathe. So they can get accumulated within the alveolus, and the same fibrotic condition. What do you mean by fibrotic condition? Proliferation of fibrous tissues, because it is all allergic substances only. So they will cause inflammation. As a result of inflammation, the more and more fibrous kind of tissues will proliferate in order to overcome. So then gradually the whole lung will become fibrous in nature. Instead of spongy, it will become fibrous. So that can damage the alveolus as well as the lungs and the functioning of lungs. So here, how can we avoid taking in of such kind of air? The workers in that industry should strictly wear the protective mask. That means it should cover the mouth as well as the nostrils. So there are in that itself. So fibrosis is a general term. Specifically, we'll specify with different names. That is byssinosis. Byssinosis. Byssinosis means it is the occupational respiratory disorder which is associated with cotton fibers. Then next one's silicosis. Silicosis means silica, the stone. So stone or sand mining, stone breaking in such, or marble cutting or granite cutting centers and all, more amount of stone particles will be there, minute stone particles, that is called as silicosis. Then the next one it is pneumoconiosis. Pneumoconiosis, mainly dust particles. Those highly polluted area and all, more amount of dust, more traffic is there means more amount of dust particles can be present. So in this way, then asbestosis, asbestos industries, asbestos can be. Then iron particles, siderosis. So different types of occupational disorders. And with this, we are concluding our session. This is the graphical representation, 3 types of pictorial representation, disorders of respiratory system, asthma, difficulty in breathing due to inflammation of bronchi or bronchioles, emphysema, it is which affects the alveolar walls, also will be damaged, which is mainly arise due to cigarette smoking. Then respiratory disorders, that is stone breaking or any other cotton industry or asbestos industry silica industries, etc. They can cause the disease. So since it is related with the occupation, it is called as occupational disorder. So with this we have come into the conclusion. All of you perform well in the exam with proper revision, and wishing you all the very best.